I want in. I want on the inside.
I don't know.
Can me and you, pal, we go back a long way? Come on. What do you think? Old time's sake?
Okay, I'll take you to the treehouse.
The treehouse? Gotta hope there's no climbing involved.
When WPS gets a hold of it, it takes all the tags out and replaces them with content. Excuse me. And then you end up with the search results page. So it includes a bunch of things, like it includes the top bar here. It includes this search box. It puts an ad there. It queries, and then it starts querying different catalogs. It goes after, I think it's the partner catalog, and it sends, so I did a search for the word dogs, and you see I have the same query string here that you see on the board, cat equals dir, query equals dogs. So it took the word dogs and it sent it to one of the query engines at the partner catalog. I think it's the partner catalog, and it came back with these two links and said, all right, hey, these two links are relevant for dogs, put those there. This is the first and fast, I'm sorry, actually this is the components catalog. Came back with this first and fast content. The way it does these, like I said, this search, you say cat equals dir, so you're doing your dog search at the dir catalog. What WPS is allowed to do is in the middle of templates, you can use something called the kitty tag. I forget exactly what kitty stands for, but it allows you to do catalog queries from inside the template as you're going. I mean, normally the template is just designed to present results from the catalog you're after. So this main template for the dir catalog there's a tag called results, and that's where you actually display your results. But instead of just displaying one set of results on every page, we have kitty calls also in the page that run other queries on the same word to other catalogs. So these links here and this first and fast content and these buttons are generated by kitty calls on other catalogs. And then the actual results tag is used here to actually print the results from the dir catalog in the categories section. And then it goes on and it makes another kitty call at the dir W catalog, which is where it gets websites. And then if you start navigating around, if I go to the news and media site here, now I'm getting stuff out of the news catalog. If I go over to web pages, this is the content out of the main Lycos search catalog.
And that content gets there through kitty calls?
Well, no, if like this one here, I'm going after, in my query string, it says cat equals Lycos. So it goes in, instead of going into the dir directory and query templates, it goes into the Lycos directory.
Okay.
And when it's presenting the main results, it's going to present them out of the Lycos catalog.
Okay.
It's the catalog you said in the search results. I'm sorry, in the query string. But all these other catalog data, which are these two links and these buttons, come out of kitty calls. And if you're on, all right, here's a good example. Now I'm on the news and media page, right? Now it says cat equals dir W, which is the website's catalog, which means that the news and media stuff is not coming out of the main searching catalog, because that's dir W. So there are no more dir W results apparently. So it does a kitty call to get stuff from news and media, and then it does another kitty call here to get stuff from Lycos. And it's the same set of results here as if I went to here. But because now I'm going directly at the Lycos catalog, this is actually the main query, whereas this is through a kitty call. I don't know if that's sensible or not.
Okay.
But that's all kitty is. It just allows you to do any kind of query that you want in the middle of a template, regardless of which catalog the template is designed to search.
It'll grab things from other places when needed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because the search results now uses one search results page now uses, I think, 7 or 8 catalog calls, and only one of them is the main dir call, and the rest of them are to partner, dir, QC, which is components, SOL, which is featured on Lycos, a couple others, I think.
Okay.
You want to pause?
Sure. All right, so we're going to talk about the link tool.
Link is a content management and generation tool developed internally by Jim Gilliam. It's almost entirely Cold Fusion, if not entirely Cold Fusion. What it is it's all web-based. Cold Fusion is simply a web application development environment. It's kind of new. A lot more people are hearing about it now. It's pretty easy to work with. It saves you a lot of time. So and it's powerful. So at any rate, what we use the Link tool for is building catalogs and document trees. Generally, smaller catalogs that need to be built multiple times a day, multiple times a week, that have very rapidly changing content, rather than catalog builds occur generally in one of two ways, either from spider data or from Link. And so spider data simply is if there's a site with a bunch of content and we want to spider it, we send the spider program through, record everything about the site in a big ball of data, and then that gets built into a catalog. It takes a long time to spider. You have to do the whole thing at once every time, straight through, and rebuild it entirely every time you want to do it. So for smaller catalogs that are either not based on a tree of web pages, or very small, they're just built out of links. For instance, the ad tags catalog. Link allows the ad tech people they go directly into Link and put in all of the word matches for the ads that they want. If somebody searches in this word, here's a relevant ad. You'd have to dive and put them all into Link, and then Link builds this ad tags catalog, and then that's loaded into the query engines on the front, and that's done every so often. I'm not sure of the exact scheduling, but it allows them to do it pretty much as often as they need to. All the open directory information is done by Link. Jim gets the import of Netscape's database, gives it to Link, and Link builds the directory, doc tree, all the directory pages, and it builds the 3 different direct catalogs.
Can you explain a doc tree quickly?
Yeah, well, a doc tree, by definition, is just simply a file system with a hierarchical arrangement of documents. A directory, inside that directory, a bunch of documents, subdirectories inside there.
So it's similar to Windows Explorer?
Yeah, Windows has a doc tree, Unix has a doc tree. All the operating systems are based on.
So we have an internal one. We have a bunch of internal ones.
Right. Well, we have pretty standard ones. We have close to 20 front ends, which all have hopefully identical doc trees sitting on them, and
So the topic is acronyms, and you have here CPD, CMD, WPS, CBD, SCD, UDS, LDAP, QS, and SUIT. Okay, which I don't know what SUIT stands for, but I know what it is. So. All right, so the real answer to this question is, what is the architecture of our service? And as I draw the architecture of the service, I'm going to be able to point in what's going on. The first, generally the ones at the top have to do with the search engine, so I'm going to talk about our service architecture. Our service architecture has a bunch of front-end web servers. There's a whole bunch of them. The internet's out here, and requests to the internet come into something called a Cisco local director. There are actually 2 of them that are a redundant pair, and this has a single IP address. If one fails, it fails over the other one within 10 seconds. And it directs and balances requests on all the different front ends. So when you say www.lycos.com, you may first be talking to FE1, and then when you click on another link, you might be talking to FE7, and so on and so forth. I think on each coast we have about 13 front ends right now. They're all running digital Unix. Software version is OSF 4.0D. I think some of them are running E now, as if this matters. On top of this, they're running the Netscape Enterprise web server 3.61, I think. There are a bunch of different web servers in the market. Major sites like ours tend to use Netscape Enterprise or an open source server called Apache. All of these, now on a typical web server you can do a bunch of things. You can serve HTML files, or you can have some side of server-side functionality. There's a bunch of different kinds of server-side functionality. One of the most common ones is CGI. It stands for Common Gateway Interface. And what that is every time a request comes in to the front end, the Netscape Enterprise server will run a program, and the program will send back the HTML that needs to be sent back to the user, and then the program will die. The overhead of starting and shutting down a program is fairly expensive, and so therefore major sites don't use CGI a lot, but it's very, very flexible. The URL that comes in has the name of the program, and runs that program. That program can do anything. It can talk to a database. It can talk to the web servers. It can look at anything transaction. Now, if you look at our search engine in the URLs, it's www.lycos.com/cgibin/pursuit question query equals X. It's the thing you're searched for. This is what you get in the URL when you do a search on Lycos, more or less. In the early days, right when Lycos started out, our search engine was a CGI program. And on a lot of web servers, CGI programs are all put in the same directory called CGI bin for CGI binaries. And the name of the binary was Pursuit. Now that wasn't efficient, so we needed to change the implementation of it. But we needed to keep the name for compatibility, because all of a sudden there were all these search boxes out there that were already calling the Lycos search engine. So today, the search engine is not a CGI bin program. What it is a server extension. Now, server extensions in Netscape are called NSAPI, Netscape Application Programming Interface, Netscape Server Application Programming Interface. Under Microsoft's Internet Information Server, there's another extension language called Internet Server API, ISAPI. These are proprietary extensions to the web server that you can write some code that gets linked into the web server. Okay? And you can basically take over almost every part of the web server. The thing that gives you is the program that you want to do runs inside the web server itself. It doesn't have the overhead of launching and shutting down, launching and shutting down. You can keep state between sessions. You don't have to load in from files every time. So what we did is we took the code and we integrated it into Netscape Web Server, and that's called. And for a while we just called it NSAPI, and then we decided it needed a name, so we called it WPS, which equals web. I think it's web page services. So WPS is the name of all code that gets linked into the Netscape web servers on the front end. And what code is that? It links in advertising, reporting. There's special code that gets linked into the web server so that in addition to logging the standard kinds of things, we want to log extra things like what people were searching for. So we link code into the web server that causes the web server logs to contain more information than they would otherwise. Advertising is the Accipiter ad engine. Accipiter is the name of the company that creates the Accipiter product. And there's a little bit of client code and front-end calls to Accipiter. And that talks to a database. Okay. Reporting every web request and all errors and things like that are put into log files. And every once in a while, separate log machines pick up the log files into a central log processing location, and they do things like create various reports. What was the traffic on the search page? Or what was the breakdown by keyword? What is the breakdown of what kind of browsers people are using looking at the site? All kinds of reports like that. Scripting. Inside, one thing that's developed with web servers is the concept of web scripts, and what that is people generally don't want to write programs that print out HTML. They want to do the inverse of that. They want to have HTML, which has the programs embedded inside them, and that's called a scripting language. Popular scripting languages that are out there include for Microsoft IIS Active Server Pages, or ASP, Java Server Pages, which puts Java embedded inside of HTML pages. There's others like PHP. But in fact, most common, believe it or not, is people write their own proprietary scripting languages. And that's what we've done in WPS. Lots of times when people talk about WPS or programming in WPS, they're talking about writing WPS scripts. And WPS scripts can be very simple. They can be something like, they look sort of like a HTML, WPS. This is probably wrong, but it's WPS add, keywords equals, dog, service equals search. Okay, so this would be inside the source of the HTML page that then calls the advertising code inside of WPS, which then replaces this with the HTML for the actual ad that it gets. Okay, so that's WPS. The other major thing that WPS done is back-end communication, and that gets to the next level of stuff. So there's a bunch of code linked into WPS that talks to the various backends. Going down the acronym list here, the most important set of backends is the search engine. So let me just draw a few things here. At all levels, we have redundant machines so that we can have a single failure of any kind of machine at peak traffic time and still keep the service running. So a front end could get completely fritzed, and the other front ends would be able to handle the load. At the same time, a query engine could get fritzed, and we could still handle the load. So that's why I draw these things redundantly. All the machines, spread out their traffic and balance. As you drop back a level, the traffic is always spread out among them. And if the machine goes down, the machines that are doing the spreading, you make sure that they're spreading the other machines. That's called load balancing. And when a machine fails and the traffic is directed elsewhere, that's called failover. So load balancing and failover are two programming concepts that we have to make sure all of our systems do while we program, and it's also an important component of QA testing, either at the QA or the ops stage. We found a whole bunch of problems, sort of as an aside, with investing, where they had not tested what happens when a particular quote server goes down in all different scenarios, and when one is restarted, and those were resulting in bad data to the service. So the search engine itself, the index to the internet, lives on these big digital Unix 8400 machines with 8 processors, 8 gigs of memory, 200 to 500 gig disks. We're looking at replacing those with networks of small PC-sized systems in the future. That project is called LQE, just because we like three-letter acronyms. And that stands for Lightweight Query Engine. So LQE would replace this big thing with 30 little PCs, all running a 30th of the catalog. But each LQE would still be running the software CQD. CQD stands for Catalog Query Daemon. That is the search engine software. You might also hear some other acronyms. You might hear CQS. CQS is the name of the software that sits on the client side and talk to CQD. You might also hear CQD CRD. In the old days, we don't do this anywhere anymore, but the query was run with one piece of software, and then the actual records, the data was retrieved from another set of software. That was the catalog record daemon. So the actual data was returned from CRD. We don't really do that anymore. It's all inside of CQD and CRD, but you'll still see, it's all inside of CQD, but you'll still see the acronym CRD someplace where there used to be two separate servers.
So those tools, the CQD, for instance, the daemon, is written in what language? It's just the...
That's all written in C.
Okay.
They're Unix programs that communicate by TCP/IP.
Okay. You can take a break if you need to.
Why don't we take a break?
Yeah.
We're back?
Yep.
Okay, so so the search engine gets a list of words, Ed Richard. It finds, all internet documents that contain the word Ed, all internet documents that contain the word Richard. It then looks, walks down all those documents to see which documents contain both, and while it's walking, it looks to see which ones seem to be better matches. So those that have Ed Richard in the same order or close together would have a higher relevance score than those that have, Ed Jones at the front and Richard Frank at the back.
And right now, the walking you're talking about is the walking of the main Lycos catalog?
This is what happens inside. This is how the algorithms work for the search engine.
Okay.
So the search engine has, for every word out there, it has a list of all internet documents that contain that word. So there literally is a list of all internet documents that contain the word Ed. And there's another list which contain the word Richard. And when you search for Ed Richard, it walks down all of them and finds the intersection of those. And it scores them while it's doing that to see which documents make the most sense to an end user for who wants to search for Ed Richard. So the ones with Ed Richard in the title, literally, will come first. Same with, if you search for, a good example, Stephen King. You search for Stephen King, and there's a document that has Stephen King in the title, it's going to have higher relevance than another document that has King Stephen in the title.
Okay.
All right, so there's a whole bunch of algorithms where, as it walks through documents, it decides which ones should come up higher. And then it returns a list of document IDs. Okay? So that's how the search engine works. Catalog query daemon. A catalog is basically an internet database. It's a database of all URLs, lists, search all of the text and fields of the documents are searchable. Query daemon means it does the query processing. So it'll return a list of documents that matches. So typically it returns, the top matching 100 documents. There is a small cache here. So if you ask a query engine for Pamela Anderson, the first time it's going to, find all documents with Pamela and then all documents with Anderson and do that. But people search for Pamela Anderson a lot. We don't want to spend all the computation time reading those very big files and searching through them. So there's a cache here, and the next time somebody searches for Pamela Anderson, it says, oh, I already did that, and send it. That cache is not used a heck of a lot right now. It has about a 7% hit rate, I think, which means that 7 out of every 100 queries actually hit that cache.
So it's on the machine that hosts the CQD technology?
Right. It's part of the CQD software.
Okay.
And if you look at the diagnostics for CQD, you can see how well the CAD is performing.
And CQD was written internally?
Yep, it's entirely internal. So now, we recently, in the last 6 to 12 months, introduced the middle tier layer. It used to be that the front ends talk directly to CQD. Now we have a middle tier. Why do we have a middle tier? For 2 reasons. One is we can centralize the cache, right? what ends up happening is you have more and more query engines, the cache becomes less and less effective, right? Because because you have to have 10 copies of Pamela Anderson in the cache, right? Whereas if you have a single set of machines, a small set, and this is literally 2 machines here that are doing the caching, then you only have to search for Pamela Anderson once, regardless of which backend does the work. So one reason you have an introduce the middle tier is to make the cache more effective. The other reason you introduce the middle tier is because you want the capability to merge together multiple catalogs. Why do you want to do that? Well, this is a big, 100 gigabyte catalog. It takes weeks to a month to build. But you don't want to update it only on a monthly basis. You want to potentially update it daily or even hourly as news stories come in. So how do you do that? Well, the real way you do that is, I'm going to erase the ad thing here since it's not related to the current conversation, is you have a mini search engine. This doesn't have to be anywhere as near as big hardware, but it's running a small 10 meg query engine. And it's really running a query engine as well, but it's running a small catalog. So this has just the news articles from today or from the last week or something like that. And then you want something that searches both this and the news, gets the results back and merges them together as if it was one big catalog. And that's the purpose of CMD, the catalog merge daemon. So from the top here, CMD looks just like a query engine. From the bottom, it allows you to break things in to lots of pieces. And we break things into lots of pieces for lots of reasons. For example, one of the things we're about to do right now is we have a catalog of home pages and the full internet catalog. The catalog of home pages we update every week or so for Tripod. The full internet one we do every 4 to 6 weeks. But we want, when people search the whole internet, we want them to get both home pages and the full internet. So we merge in that. Okay. Another reason we might want to have a small one other than news stories is if people want to add their site to Lycos, they'd like to see it up on Lycos pretty quickly, so we'll add it to the small server here. This server, by the way, Ops calls them the SCQ servers. I don't know why, I don't know what SCQ stands for, but when they say SCQ, it's just a machine, it's a small, maybe SCQ is small catalog query. That might be what it is. But there's just a small number of machines that have all these, small, dinky, 10 megabyte, 100 megabyte catalogs on them that get merged in by the merge server. Okay. So that takes care of the top 3. All right. So the front ends run WPS, which is a web service, which talks to the middle tier catalog merge daemon and the catalog query daemon. And the other search engine acronyms are LQE, which is what we're going to do is take this thing here and replace it with sort of a whole network of 30 little PCs in a rack, each running a 30th of the catalog. Same software, it's just running on PCs rather than big Linux machines. So we've got ding, 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 ding. Okay, the next set of acronyms has to do with building catalogs. Let's talk about the catalog build process. So what there's bunches of spiders. These are fairly small boxes. Right now they're small digital Unix boxes, and we're probably going to switch over to PCs just because they're cheaper. And there's a big honkin' catalog build machine. There's 3 of them right now called, innovatively enough, Catalog 1, Catalog 2, and Catalog 3. These machines, probably, for the detailed description on this, you need to talk to Eric Gardner and group. But the spiders talk to the internet. They spend most of their time waiting, right? They'll make a connection and then they'll wait for the web server to respond. So they have lots and lots of threads and processes in parallel, just waiting for random web servers in Japan, or maybe web servers that are down, dead links on the internet, whatever. They spend all their time waiting. And then when they get something in, they send it over the network to something called the CUS. CUS is the Catalog Update Server. And the CUS just drops it into files. You spider for a while, and then after a while what you do is you take all the records that you've gotten from the internet and you merge them in with the records you had before. So you don't ever throw out all of the records you had before, because you rarely are able to contact all the servers. You're never really able to contact all the servers that you've ever contacted in the past. So you merge it in with what you know from before. And the merge rules are sort of funny, because the server might be down temporarily, or and there might be redirects or something like that. Anyway, so you end up with a list of records, and that's called a rec file. That goes through an indexing process, and that results in a catalog. And I am simplifying this greatly, but I think for the purpose of this discussion, that's all we need. And the catalog is then tested and then copied onto the CQD systems. Okay. That's how the big Lycos catalogs work. But we've got all these little catalogs which we want to do in a semi-automated fashion. Well, how can we do that in an automated fashion? What we do, you recall, the output of all the spidering and merging is a thing called a rec file. Basically, we say that anybody who wants to create a catalog has to create a rec file. Okay. Think of it as a spreadsheet where you get to pick the column headings and you get to pick which columns get indexed. So for a news catalog, it might have a column that no other catalog has, which is what newswire it came from, or you might know the author of this particular feed. Right? Usually one of the things in a catalog is a URL, because it's a result you want to be able to click on it. Usually, not always. Okay, so rec files can come from a whole bunch of places. But what we did is we designed a machine, or a process called CBD, Catalog Build Daemon. This is a piece of software which takes that whole complicated indexing process that I skipped over and automates it. So what it does is just sits on the network and listens for somebody to send it a rec file. So if somebody sends it a rec file, it's been configured to know that this is a Reuters News rec file. It knows how to index it. It sets the time, indexes it, and then it copies it out to all of the machines necessary and contacts all the machines that are necessary to contact to help this new catalog. So for example, it contacts the CMD server and says, hey, there's a new Reuters News catalog. Forget all the information you have cached about that Reuters News catalog. Right? And it knows how to do it in order, so it copies it up to all these machines, and then after everything's successfully copied, it tells them, okay, go flip to use the new version. Okay. That's the catalog build daemon.
The OPD. My name is Mike Chestel. I'm the Directory Product Manager. It's Elizabeth Mitchell in Integration and Jim Gilliam in Engineering. Go work on the directory. So the big question in everybody's mind is it OPD or is it ODP? Which is it? Show of hands. We have this weekly release process of one of the two. Is it ODP? Okay, that's about half. OPD. Okay, so we have a lot of standards. Okay, so there are some people out there that think it's the OPD. The OPD stands for a number of things that don't relate to the directory. Jim has some URLs he can send you if you're interested in any of these topics. Okay, so what's the ODP? The ODP is the Open Directory Project. What is the Open Directory Project? And by the way, feel free to chime in with any questions if we're going too slow, too fast. It should be interactive. The Open Directory Project. The Open Directory is an open organic network of volunteer editors that go out and choose websites. They've built the taxonomy, and Mozilla has this directory, and they license it to different people. It's actually Netscape now The Open Directory started as NewWho in June of 1998. It was just a startup, a few guys. In 5 months, it became the 5th largest directory on the web. And in 1998, in late 98, it was acquired by Netscape. It's got an absolutely incredible growth rate. If you think about the number of sites in the Open Directory, the number of categories, or the number of actual volunteer editors, each of those is growing at 2 to 3% per week. So one of the fastest growing things that we have throughout the Lycos network. What are the features of the Open Directory? Basically, it's there are editors that kind of are editors for particular categories. And some editors are for very deep categories, very deep within the taxonomy. Other editors are higher up within the taxonomy. But it's kind of a community. There's 5 to 10 to 15 editors per category, and they're regularly updating the taxonomy, adding websites that they choose. It's kind of a committee. These 5 to 10 to 15 editors per category that are choosing which sites to add. And there's a process by which you can become a DMOZ editor. Basically, anybody can apply, and then they have an acceptance process, and about 20% of people actually become editors. So how does this relate to Lycos directories? The goal for Lycos directories is to become the definitive listing for websites on the net. We want our user to say, why should I go to any other directory when I can go to Lycos and get it there? And we want to kind of do something beyond just having a directory of websites. We want to create an environment that fosters organic growth and the formation of communities of interest around topics. And so we want to, the goal is really to integrate all these great websites with all the other content and features that we have, such as clubs and pictures and all the other great ones that we have. So why did we make the shift from the old directory product to this directory? We wanted to transform the existing product to the largest directory on the internet, and we were able to kind of do that just with one leap by making this shift. Maximize the revenue potential that is created with vertical content categories. So now, as we have a lot more content for areas like sports and games and entertainment in the directory, people can be navigating through that and then link back into the web guide, and so it's a much more complete user experience. More sites and more categories that are constantly fresh increase the overall traffic to the directory, and we certainly want to increase the number of page views per visit. So the more content, the more people are actually going back and forth through it. So more on that. Right now, it's getting close to the largest directory on the internet. Yahoo actually has close to 1.5 million sites, maybe a little more than that, but I think our growth rate is considerably greater. Just a few months ago, we were about half those numbers on topics and sites and editors. What do we get out of having these 14,000 editors? We're harnessing the knowledge of thousands of people from diverse locations and backgrounds and interests to find information. And there's no one expert, but there's thousands of experts. Phenomenal growth rate I've already talked about. And the major PR appeal, we can attract and keep new users to Lycos.com. It's not, if you look at some of the media metrics and NPD reports, a lot of times Lycos has a very good rate of attracting new users to new web participants, but then when they come to Lycos, we've had a hard time historically keeping them. Now with this great product that meets people's needs, we're going to hopefully keep people more. So just kind of, this is the landscape of the directory market, and there's a couple of important dimensions to think about when you think about directories. Who is building the directory? Is it an individual or is it a community? And then is it done by actual humans or is it done by a machine? And the old technology that we had with WiseWire was a machine generated. It was a machine system where we kind of rated the websites that based on how much people actually clicked through. And so we started up there and moving, taking the Open Directory, we've come down here. Yahoo has 80 to 100, I'm not sure right now how many editors they have, but they have a whole bunch of individuals maintaining different categories, whereas now we're in now we have a community of editors maintaining different categories. So it's kind of, it's where you want to be because you harness more minds and it's individuals. Individuals can pick the best sites as opposed to machines. Any questions so far? All making sense? So just a little background on what we've done with Netscape. Lycos.com and hotbot.com have adopted Netscape's Open Directory. And it basically allows us to take the basic directory structure and then build a new and better product. One thing that you ought to check out, and maybe we'll do it here a little later, is dmods.org is basically the primary place that this directory exists. It's kind of the home area for these Mozilla editors. And we have the same directory that they do, more or less. But what we can do now that we have all this other content, we can update and expand the directory, keep it fresh, add new features and functionality. So the core content will be the same, but we're hoping to improve the interface, improve the features, integrate additional content, so we'll have a better product at the end of the day.
A question. Is there a noticeable difference in quality between the Yahoo directory and Open? But I mean, if you're paying people as employees versus recruiting them.
Yeah, I think you can argue that the volunteer editor network has been pretty successful at attracting people who are passionate about these topics, and whether I think as you check out one category in Yahoo and one category in the Open Directory, from one user to the other, quality is kind of relative, right? So you might think that the sports Yahoo network is better versus like his Open Directory, the entertainment Open Directory product might be better than Yahoo. I don't think that we can definitively say it's better than Yahoo. So I talked about a new and improved product, better integration with search, guides, community, and e-commerce. If you've been looking at what we've done with search and integrating WebMD recently, you'll really see that we've done a great job of integrating the WebMD co-branded content. We're about to expand it across the rest of the directory categories. Links to relevant e-commerce areas, more intuitive user interface. There's still a long way to go there. And there's new features and functionalities such as what are the new sites that have been listed or that have been added in the last week. Maybe we can alphabetize the directory. There's a whole bunch of things that we can do.
Hey Mike, that's a question. The question I have is, are we imposing our own taxonomy on top of theirs? Because let's say a bunch of editors decided, we really don't want to do sports anymore, right? And then all of a sudden, as a portal, we probably want to support the fact that we have a sports directory, right? So what would happen then?
In general, we want to harness the value of these thousands of editors. So we don't want to be making changes to the taxonomy, but we have the ability to do that. And one of the reasons that we would do that is for advertising. So one thing that we do on a weekly or bi-weekly basis is when we get the upload of the data from Mozilla, and then a lot of times the categories will change. New categories are added, categories are shifted. Sometimes we just had a situation with preview travel where there's a category air travel was right beneath the travel category, and then in the new set of data, air travel is getting moved down and across, so it's 2 levels deeper. And preview travel had a product spot on this air travel page that was getting a great click-through rate, and so they were concerned about moving it lower, that they weren't going to get as many clicks. And in that case, because they were getting such a great click-through, we've decided to kind of keep this air travel section, at least in the short term, where it is right now. What we lose by that is that future changes to that air travel category are not propagated into our directory. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. We want to have as little editorial work on our side. The editorial work that we want to have is integrating the rest of the Lycos content. So we can impose changes on the taxonomy, but we prefer not to.
Then how do you deal with the e-commerce? I'm sure there are a lot of categories that you can add in a week. I'm sure that all the e-commerce deals apply not for a week basis, but probably 6 or 7 month basis. So how do you manage to fulfill the e-commerce without imposing on the taxonomy?
Yeah, that's kind of the same thing. If an e-com partner has bought a particular category for a period of months, and we have some kind of legacy contracts, then we kind of do have to keep those things. I mean, that's right. So we can renegotiate those things going forward. We want to actually sell the directory categories differently, so that sort of situation doesn't happen as much.
Don't we overwrite use hard copy catalog or node? Don't we use that to overwrite the
We do not build the shopping categories of the Open Directory. The shopping category that you see on our homepage is actually to the stuff, the internal e-commerce stuff.
So that's really a Lycos creative, right?
Right. Yeah, we completely ignore the shopping from the Open Directory. Yeah.
And then the other thing that we do is sometimes we'll have directory partners, and we'll add in things into the directories. And the primary example of that right now is IntelliSeek. It's we call it an invisible web. And it's basically these directory of databases. And so right now, if you go to the homepage of the directory, you'll see under reference a databases category. And that's not from Mozilla at all, but it's from IntelliSeek. And so going forward, we may do more of these types of things for really niche directories.
Is it policy to actually say what's Lycos content on stuff?
You can determine this in the footer. Basically there's an Open Directory attribution on the bottom of the page, basically a green box. It says Open Directory requires you to become an editor, right? And when it's not, it'll have a different attribution, like you have an IntelliSeek attribution in the social databases.
Yeah, it's
but we don't bring it out a lot at all.
Has anybody from DMOS complained about that? Are there people who care? Like
they haven't up to this point complained about us changing and doing things like that. The editors, are pretty sensitive if their categories are not imported properly, or if another editor is listed and they're not an editor anymore. There was a definite incident where there was a bug that was not causing editors to be removed from the Lycos version of the ODP, but were being that were removed from the DMOS editors. And so this one basically insane editor went nuts again, like double insanity or something, I don't know. And basically started screaming bloody murder that Lycos was out to get him and stuff like that. And of course he has no idea that Lycos doesn't even have a clue that this person exists and really doesn't give a rip about him. But it was a really big deal, and it turned out actually ultimately that one, I figured out, of course, that this was a bug, right? But then two, it turned out the guy really was even more insane than anybody had anticipated, and he's suing the Open Directory project itself and a variety of other things. He's created anti-Open Directory websites, and he spams the editors. He was removed by the Open Directory management from being an editor ever again, and everybody sort of makes fun of him now, all the editors there. His name is Odin IVUSA. I don't know how you say that, but it's like Odenevusa or something. But so he's kind of legendary now, and I feel really happy that I was sort of the instigator of all of that.
Speaking of spamming the editors, what's some of the
If they want, the directory is different. And so now the task is to actually integrate the WebGuide content into the directory and vice versa where appropriate. So the guides now are destination channels for great content commerce community, whereas the directory is a directory of websites and it's a hub for navigation throughout the Lycos network and all of our content. So redesigning the directory, better editorial tools to facilitate control over the content. We have greater control over the user interface, more opportunities for real-time content delivery. We have this component architecture to facilitate deployment and use of the product by networking business partners. A good example of this is the Barnes & Noble component that we've recently introduced. If in some of the categories where there are books that Barnes & Noble has that are relevant for that category, we've spidered the Barnes & Noble database of books, and we actually have a component beneath the websites that says books, and it lists the first 5 books based on bestsellerness or whatever. And it's got the price of the book, and then if you click onto that, you go to the actual book itself, and then if there's 50 books in that category, you've got a link that says more, so you can go to all 50 books. So we want to build out these components for more types of content than we have throughout the network. The challenge is not overwhelming the user. We don't want to have 50 different components for all the content we have. So the redesign also is intended to have more compelling organizational information, much better integration with search, And hopefully we can build out a turnkey solution to co-branding where we can actually go out to our distribution partners and say, here's our directory.
Oh, I know Carol has been doing taxonomy.
A directory of all companies that have websites. So as opposed to the Yellow Pages, which has 11 or 12 million companies, the directory that we build of companies that have websites will be closer to 1.5 or 2 million. And we want to add, it's not just kind of Yellow Page content where you have an address and a phone number and stuff. We're going to have links into news and links into stock ticker and financial information. These things, it's kind of out there right now. CNET has a good example of it, but that's a huge initiative. Integration, we've talked a lot about with search, with featured on Lycos improvements. There's this page 2 initiative, which I talked a little bit about, where with Barnes & Noble you have the list of 5 books, and then you can click on more, and then go to all 50 books. And then integration with clubs and other community products, where we're building passionate advocates and contributors to Lycos. So they're DMOS contributors, they're Lycos contributors, etc. Personalization is something that would be great to get to, where when somebody goes in to register for My Lycos, they can also say, you know what, I actually like newsgroups quite a bit, I actually like homepages quite a bit, and I read a lot of books and I like to buy books. So when I do a search on something on Lycos and I start to navigate through the directory, these are the components that I'd like to see appear in addition to the websites. So that is something that's a little far down the road, but we think that could be a really great user experience. Tools and infrastructure. One of the essential components to the company's directory, in addition to just it's a directory of companies that's useful to the user, is that it's a totally organic product. We're going to enable companies to come in and say, I'd actually rather be in this category than that category, because now I sell bikes, not toothpaste, and here's my stock ticker symbol, and here's a description of my company. So at the end of the day, we want to emulate this DMOS concept where it's totally organic. And we want to build our own tools, which take a step beyond our DMOS.
Disclaimers. One was that you should just know that I mentioned to Shmeet like 3 weeks ago. Maybe this is something that would be useful to people if we all got out here and told people a little bit about the Open Directory. And he came to me about 25 minutes ago and said, how about now? Okay. Plus 24 hours ago. But so just want to let you know that and I actually did this 25 minutes ago. So this may not be the most organized, but maybe it'll give you a little sense of how things work. The other thing you should know is that PowerPoint crashed my computer several times yesterday, so I'm not using it today. So I'm using Word, and I apologize if this gives product management a bad name. But
and she's had flu for the last 48 hours too, so she kind of falls over.
And then the other thing I want to let you know about, just from my perspective, my role during this whole launch of the Open Directory has sort of been a little bit on the fringe. Hugh Drum is actually the person who did the product management part of the whole launch of the Open Directory. And as you guys may or may not know, he's now driving across the United States with the dog, talking about Lycos and from Idaho to Arizona to Rhode Island and everything in between. So unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. So I'm going to do my best to try to give you some sense of what happens, but I'm not actually in the center of it, but I'm going to try to just fill you in on a few holes. So I'm going to talk about the who, how, and when of the Open Directory, plus integration and search. Word. Okay, so let's start off with the who. The group from the engineering side that really deals with the Open Directory is Jim Gilliam, who's sitting there in the olive green shirt, so you can direct your problems to him. He's sort of like the circus master of the Open Directory, if you can imagine that. And backing him up is Dennis Stroudy, who couldn't be here today because he's picking his son up at camp. Monty Solomon, who's sitting right next to Jim. And that's really the engineering team that does a lot of the work. It really does take a lot of their time to do this process. And what I thought was really interesting, I'll talk about this more in detail in a moment, when you were talking about how you can just submit your website to the Open Directory, get it up today. It won't actually be on Lycos today, or tomorrow, or possibly even like a week from today. It actually is a very involved process. It takes some time before it actually comes to Lycos, and I just sort of wanted to make sure you knew that that's a big thing. Then we've got John Maliola, does a lot of our design work. And we've got Mike Genestel, who's really the directory product manager now. Lincoln Jackson, who's the search product manager, who also couldn't be here today, but I'm going to try to fill you in a little bit on the relationship between the directory and search. Myself and Alan Newcomb, who's also at the beach today. And in addition to this group, there are a few other people who we really couldn't do this without. The first group, of course, is the DMOZ engineers, whoever they are, wherever they are, they're great. Then we've got the QA team. We've got Steve Baker hiding over in the corner. Most of you probably can't see him, but he and Rick Pike and the rest of the group just do an amazing job of making sure we get a quality product out there. Ops, it really takes everybody in Ops to get this stuff up. And then on the advertising side, we've got Toby Boyd, who manages the inventory, and Howard Kugelmeyer, who does a lot of the tagging of the directory, making sure that we get the right ads in the right places. So how does it work? What is this huge process? Well, basically, you've got a lot of processes that are happening all the time on the back end. And then one day we decide, well, it's time to build the Open Directory and have a new release. We're trying to get to a schedule. And I don't know where that is right now in terms of scheduling. Is it like once every 2 weeks or once every week, depending on where we can get things? This is all new, so we're really building things as we go forward. The first step is basically Jim goes to the DMOZ site and pulls down the data about the Open Directory taxonomy. And then that information is actually a week behind from what it is at that moment. Is that right? From what's live?
Yeah, it depends. Basically, DMOZ, step -1 is, DMOZ runs this script that spits out some XML files of the Open Directory, and that occurs, in theory every week, but doesn't actually happen. And it's those files that drive, step 1 here.
So Jim pulls that in. The next step he does, he runs a variety of processing scripts on the data. And the kinds of things that we do with it are sort of some things that sort of make it more Lycos-sized. One of the nice things that we do is we take any reference to Amazon.com actual books and turn them into Barnes & Noble links so that when you come to Lycos and you click on those things, you get the book. Which, you laugh, but that's a smart marketing move. We've got to be directing traffic, you laugh, but we have to be directing traffic to our partners, but we want to make sure that the content is there in the right place at the right time. Are we doing the same with links to Yahoo?
There aren't a whole lot of links to Yahoo because the Open Directory editors hate Yahoo. So, we get along great.
So don't the Open Directory editors mind when you go around rewriting all the links and so on, or just they haven't?
We've actually, anticipating the sensitivity from the editors, we've tried to do that as few times as possible. And in fact, the Barnes & Noble thing was actually a huge compromise and took a lot of wrangling to convince people that would actually do that.
Kind of the whole checkbox which says allow substitution of the generic equivalent.
He creates the flat HTML pages that basically make up the doc tree. Essentially the process is he takes the data, pulls it through templates, and just wraps up the thousands and thousands of HTML pages that way. And unfortunately, this is actually the only way those pages get edited. So it doesn't happen this way because there's not a lot of editorial work on those pages per se, the way that there's like an editorial and fine-tuning to the web guides. It's all just sort of pulling together data. So there are rarely spelling mistakes or anything else, but if those are there sort of isn't any simple way to go in and edit them because they're like mass generated. So it's just important that you understand that point when you call me or call Jim and say, hey, this is not represented the way I would have it represented. It's actually, it's just a part of the rebuild process to update that. So that is a change that we just get on the live site every couple of weeks at the next build. And then the final step is we take the XML data from Link, and we use that to build the catalog, the Monty's Baby CBD. And we output a few different catalogs. The first one is the Dur and Durex, which are categories. Categories and what else? I didn't write down the other ones.
They're both categories.
They're both
They're merged together, and relevancy shenanigans
Right,
makes them show up right.
They're actually the same catalog, it's
Oh, okay.
different relevant settings.
Oh, okay. DurW has the websites in it, and coming soon, I'm sure you're all very excited, we have the Duref catalog, and I'll talk more about why that is very exciting, and why it's in red. It's actually cool.
Yeah, I have a question about DurW.
Okay.
Are we actually expiring the site that is indexing, or are we indexing it?
Let me just touch on a couple more points, and then we'll actually pull up the Open Directory and look at a few of the elements that are in there. So what and how do we integrate? Right now, we basically integrate this collection of stuff from the guides and co-brands over to some network content, classifieds, options. We want to really expand that list. And we also, I'm sure you've all seen the Open Directory as it is right now. The integration section is just that one little box featured on Lycos. There are 9 links kind of squished into one little, 2 by 1 inch square. And it's not the best integration plan at all. But if you've seen the health tree, that we have done a little bit different integration in some other sections with, it's more expansive, it gives you a little description. It's just a better form of integration, and we're going forward, everything's going to be like that. So in general, how do we integrate? That is my piece, and I work with Laura Edwards and Corey, whose last name I'm blanking on. Tournay, who's brand new to our team, and these folks are going to be working with me and the whole group to make sure that integration happens and that it's relevant and that it's good. All right, in general, how's the ODP related to search results? We changed from having just the main catalog, which had just all variety of stuff. If you remember search results back in January, if you searched on dog, you got some web guide content, some other Lycos content, and then you just got the main catalog. It could have been anything. Could have been, news groups, message boards from who knows where in the internet. Who knew if it was live? Who knew if it was relevant, etc.
You want to say what the main catalog is versus?
Yeah, it's just the spider that goes out to the internet and gathers massive amounts of information, as opposed to what we have now, which is you search on something and you actually get links to the Open Directory, starting off with categories, and then that actually directs you to the Open Directory as an encyclopedia of information that can direct you in different directions from there. And then the next section we have on search results is the websites, which is the category, followed by some URLs that are in there. And then the news and media and web pages catalog, which you still have, which are also both these massive spiders, organized by massive spiders.
What's the logic of choosing which website to put up on the map? It's not the whole category standard.
No, it's not. It has to do with just relevancy in terms of the one word or phrase that you search on. Yeah.
You have to match on the website as opposed to the category. We do inherit some sort of relevance for the categories that websites are in, but like the categories you're matching the category, and in the websites you're matching the website, and we happen to show what category they're in.
Okay, whatever data came with that website description.
Basically,
Can you do something more general?
Yeah.
So this is a search results version of that information. Here we have the link that goes straight to the category, and this shows you the hierarchy of that category. So it gives you a sense of where in the tree this falls. And then these down here are the categories, which has the bullet, and then the actual website that sends you off-site to some content.
But these websites are from the directory. So it's a critical distinction, the difference between the websites and the web pages. The websites has about 600 or 7, in our directory there's probably 700,000 websites in there right now. Web pages, on the other hand, is what Elizabeth is calling the main catalog, which has probably 30 or 40 million websites in it. And the other way you can distinguish between the two is you see the really nice description here. You can tell a human wrote that description, as opposed to web pages where you're just kind of spidering the the metadata, so that, you know, there's no like editorial work there.
Do you think it might be better to call that sites from our directory? Because there's no difference between websites and web pages.
Yeah, it's a great point, and we definitely want to do that. Yahoo actually does websites and web pages, so it's silly that you know we do it. We should make it intuitive to the user.
Someone's got to know the difference.
Yeah, this is another one of these web guides versus directory. They're both websites, right?
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
it should be word sites and then voice sites.
Well, it should have editorially chosen
Useful
websites
websites.
versus, yeah, monetized editorial websites versus random websites.
All right, point well taken. Boy, we never thought of that before. No, we absolutely are aware that that's an issue. And to discuss it more, you can ask Lincoln Jackson to
Who's very conveniently not here.
Where do web guides fit into all this?
That's my next topic.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the integration that we have now and that you've seen in a lot of the directories, and you've got that little featured on Lycos box that has 3 by 3 links in it. So we're well aware that that is not a great traffic driver. People don't really look at those links, much less click on them, or not to a huge extent. What people really like to see and what people click on are links with a nice amount of descriptive text so they know what they're getting, plus a little description. So we're actually going to integration that looks like this in the directory, and I'll show you what that looks like. But actually, let me go ahead and show you that first. So this is what it's going to look like in the directory side. You'll get the link that's not limited in character size and then a description.
And when she says it's going to look like
Web
that.
Guide. This is actually WebMD. This is their content that we've integrated in. Our goal is to integrate all of the guide content in this manner so that we can drive more traffic to it. And then it's going to show up in search results in the same fashion, plus with a little paw to indicate that this is Lycos selected content. So that hopefully will drive more traffic to all of our properties, web guides and everything else.
How many people do you think know this call means it's Lycos?
I don't know.
1 in 4.
Yeah.
Link in a technical sense. How is it structured? What's the architecture? How do I actually build things on top of it? Why do I want to build things on top of it? Those kinds of things. So we're going to run maybe 8 of these. So you consider it a mini-series of sorts. They'll be about link, but also about related things in our group, like CBP. Maybe a person called Elmer. I don't know if Jason's here somewhere. So first I wanted to ask everybody, what everybody thinks link is. So I know there's a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different things that people use it for. So, Laura, what do you think link is?
It's an internal tool that everybody should use.
Okay. Keep coming, come on.
Sorry.
Okay, come on, what is link?
I have no idea.
You
It
know
has
what?
something to
Okay.
do with catalogs and doctrines.
Okay.
Backbone.
Knowledge management.
Knowledge manager?
Universal taxonomy.
I'll just call that tag. Anybody else? Okay, this sort of indicates that there are a lot of things that you can do with LINQ. These are all various aspects of it. Primarily, LINQ is something that lets you build and manage taxonomies. So the taxonomy administration tool is probably succinctly the core of what it does. It's used to build a variety of different applications of Lycos. Essentially anything that we want to structure in a taxonomy of some kind and have various data pour into that taxonomy. So we use it for things like taking feeds from partners via the image gallery or something like that, import it into this big taxonomy of things inside of LINQ, and then we publish it out in some fashion, hence the catalog and doctrine kind of things right here. Backbone aspects here are sort of related to the fact that the more things we get together into this one system, the more we can do with them. So we can integrate things. We can say that, oh, this image gallery thing here is going to link to this open directory thing over here, which is going to link to this tripod thing over here, which is going to link to something else. And this is one of the core things that Lycos does in driving traffic throughout the sites, both from search results, but from throughout all of our different properties. You guys still with us?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's also a data mining tool in that we can pull in all sorts of different data from our competitors, from potential partners to figure out whether we should actually do the deal or not, and gather interesting information related to the size, and we can do analysis to figure out whether or not Yahoo has a 500,000 URL company database, and we have like 20,000 or something like that. So we can figure out these kinds of things. LINQ is also a publishing tool, which is both catalogs and doctrines. LINQ actually spits out a lot of XML types of things, which other parts of the Lycos infrastructure use to build these catalogs. It also spits out thousands and thousands and thousands of HTML files in a static sort of environment that we can then push to the live service. This is what Teak does a lot of right here. And he loves me for it. LINQ is good to rapidly prototype things. Recently we've been using it to prototype various new iterations of the search page, which we can usability test, and Dave Hendry does a lot of that stuff so that we can test out different designs, see what things will work, what things won't work, etc. We used it to prototype many different iterations of the directory back maybe 6 months ago. Fundamentally, what I like to view LINQ as is an operating system. Potentially even the Lycos operating system, right? It's the core foundation from which we can build any sort of application on top of it. So, if you go into LINQ and you view the main page, which probably most of you have seen, it seems kind of unassuming, but you're not really sure what the heck's going on exactly. You drill down and you see all these different little colors and things, and you see all these little buttons and little edit things here and little check boxes and all these things like that, right? And it's all kind of confusing and quite often very intimidating. You see all this data and you're like, what do I do? But it's sort of like, going into the DOS command line and going in there and saying, hey, I want to move something, this node here to this node over here, etc. Right? What we've been doing recently, stuff that Kyle here has been working on, and a few others, is building applications on top of this. The application I'm referring to is Nickel, in that we get a specialized view or a wizard that people can come in, particularly our program managers for the various different partners can come in, and they can get this nice, specific, task-oriented way of modifying information, and it all gets stored inside of LINQ, in sort of a LINQ internal, which I'll get into a little bit later. Then it flows into the whole system of building catalogs, and goes out to live service, et cetera, et cetera. So LINQ is sort of this middle tool. So I can questions at this point? I thought I'd give a brief history of LINQ, sort of see where where we're going to, and so it'll answer, it'll provide sort of a foundation to answer a lot of questions later on as to why Link does things in certain ways and things like that. Originally, I started at Lycos almost a year ago, and so this was around, this was 2 redesigns ago, right sort of in the thick of it, and we were going to be creating this new thing called contextual navigation, right? And it was this grand scheme to link all of the different aspects of our site in sort of this left-hand navigational frame, so that you could be in the image gallery and get to chat. It was all going to be contextual, and it was going to have all of these taxonomy-oriented inheritance things, so that it would figure out, oh, you're here, you're interested in this, we're going to take you there, etc. So Link was designed to handle that issue and allow people, in general, non-technical people specifically, like producers and editors and whatnot, to go into this one web-based interface and specify all the different links they want in all these different pages. And if they wanted to specify a lot of links, they could. If they only wanted to specify some high-level things, they could, and we would just sort of try to figure it out and have all that managed. Previously, we had been doing this kind of thing in Excel, and there were a lot of little Excel spreadsheets running around, a lot of different versions of those Excel spreadsheets running around. It's something that a lot of you refer to as Kitty, was a keyword insertion text something. And so Link was sort of the replacement for those Excel files. That's how we started. Then it sort of broadened to, since we had all this information here from the WiseWire taxonomy at the time, we imported it so that we could do this contextual navigation. So we had all that in there. It then started running the matching categories in the search results, so that, if you remember a couple of designs ago, possibly, we had matching categories there, and it had little, links with some little description about them, and all of that basically came out of Link, was built into a catalog, and it was put live. First and Fast came after that, which is, we see these a lot in our search results pages, these little sort of snippets of things related to either celebrities or recent news events or things like that. And there's a whole team, people that manage that, Laura and Elizabeth, they handle a lot of that stuff. Image Gallery, which I think I've mentioned, came sort of after that, the Blockbuster video database. We basically took feeds, dumped it into this taxonomy inside of Link, spit out catalogs, and used WPS to look at those, basically the Lycos web scripting language on the front end, to talk to that catalog and build out the navigation and the taxonomy drill down. Product offers came shortly after that. It's a long since defunct thing that we were using to drive traffic to our partners like CD Now and Barnes & Noble. Basically, it really quite simple. It just spidered Barnes & Noble or CD Now to pull in various information related to products and have those show up on the search results page on the right-hand side instead of those little partner buttons which you see all over the place. The idea was, more people would click on them because they were actual products and stuff like that. Partners ultimately decided to can that at various different points. Release 1.0 around that time, we flipped over the previous efforts that have been occurring in the WiseWire stuff, which was a automated way of generating taxonomies, whereas opposed to Link, which was very manual and very feed-oriented and very, we have 100 editors come here, click buttons and do things. This was, slightly before that, Elizabeth Mitchell, who's sitting right here, joined on as product manager. So a lot of you in this room have an interface with her to get accounts and to complain and things like that. Tripod. What?
And to praise.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Tripod started using Link. I know John's here, John Molesky. We're going to say hi. They started using Link to build out the Explore section of the Tripod site. Around this time, What?
Can we take a look break and look at the piece of it?
Is it not in here?
We need it here. We could throw them in.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, why don't we stop for a second? Around this time, international sort of became, more of a priority for Link, and a lot of effort was put into, is Link double-byte enabled? What about Unicode? What about how do we handle this? And there's a lot of initial things where we thought everything seemed to work because basically everything was being corrupted in exactly the same way. So there was a lot of, we didn't think it was going to be a big deal, and it turned out to be a very big deal. I don't know if the different basis is here, but we ended up outsourcing a lot of the Link internationalization things, particularly for the Far East, Japan, Korea, China, whatever else, to handle these extended characters. So that's been an ongoing effort. I don't believe it's still not done. So that started happening around that time. E-commerce started popping on the scene, and from the get-go, they decided that they wanted to make sure that their content was integrated throughout Lycos. So they built their taxonomies and their drill downs for all their different products, classifieds, their comparison shopping services, and a few others, inside of the Link, and built an infrastructure so that they could pull out that information and view it through an Oracle database on the live site. It's actually very slick, and I don't know if you were here a little earlier, Corey talked a little bit about that. Then came the Open Directory. We spent a lot of effort building our own directory, and we were getting ready to launch it. That's what a lot of the usability testing that was being done around that time. And we ended up going with the Open Directory project for a lot of reasons. We've actually had a seminar a little while ago, maybe a few weeks ago, talking about how the Open Directory works. But basically, it's a really, really big feed in RDF, which is a subset of XML. And we get it sort of on a bi-weekly basis. This huge, it's maybe, I don't know, what is it, like 250, 300 megs of information that we pull into Link and update and run through this whole series of processes of which Mike Genstill is very familiar with. And use that to create what's called the Lycos directory. Several different aspects of it, the primary point of which is the Open Directory, but there's also the Invisible Web, which is 10,000 or so sites which are databases where people can use to search sort of what they call the hidden information on the web, stuff that is not normally spidered by like the Lycos spider. Also, Safe Search was added to that. So basically we took several different feeds and integrated them all together into the basic Open Directory structure, and we published that out on sort of a bi-weekly basis, and that's the Lycos directory. We also publish out catalogs, and that is what drives a few of the sections in search now. Around this time, Kyle Morton, who's sitting right here, and Jason Horman, who is somewhere, and I can't see him, maybe, joined on. And Kyle does a lot of the work and the enhancements and related things to Link now that I don't have any time to do, unfortunately. Jason does a lot of like next generation things that are related to Link, but not Link per se. Other ways to manage our site, actually using the live site to manage itself, and with ties back into Link in various different ways, which we'll probably talk about in future seminars down the line. We talked about Nickel, Lycos Zone, another directory. Latin America is working on directories. Brooks is here, etc. I know Roger Powell, Chris Mudgett and Mike are working on the company directory, which is another one of these applications that are built on top of Link, sending data in so that it can be integrated as part of the regular processes and throughout our site, but building extensions over here to do various other things like handle submissions and various company information and things like that. So that's basically it. That takes us to today and this wonderful seminar. Any questions related to that? I thought I'd talk briefly about the basic link terminology. You see a lot of things as you're using link. You see a lot of words bantered about that quite possibly don't make any sense. First one, of course, being the taxonomy. Taxonomy are basically, you know, you have the top node, and then you have arts and sports or whatever, and then under here you have baseball, and it's this whole basic tree, right? And you have trees and you have leaves and things like that, and that's sort of the basic foundation upon which Link stores its data, is that there's this huge tree of information, and we have several different trees, which you can see on the top page of Link. And some of these are the Yahoo directory, which we can talk about later. Some of these, the Lycos directory, which we talked about, e-commerce stuff, tripod, variety of different things, but all structure this information in a tree. So that's basically what a taxonomy is. We have this notion of attaching queries to individual taxonomy nodes. So we'll decide that, you know, Mark McGuire should be attached to baseball for whatever reason. And because we want to provide a good search experience for our users, so we attach these queries to the... Hey guys, can you put your phone on mute?
Yep, sorry.
Thanks. Thank you. So queries are basically things that we attach to various different nodes, that we pop up those nodes even if our regular sort of search algorithms don't actually figure it out. Something like Mark McGuire attaching to baseball is not an obvious thing to most search engines, so we sort of fake it. There's a lot of people here that do that kind of thing. It's what's referred to broadly here, sometimes it's kidding, but that's totally wrong, so I forgot I said that. One of the other basic elements of Link is the bonder. And it should actually probably pop up the screen right now, but essentially it's a way to view two taxonomies at the same time. So we've got here, you know, we have your main Link view, which has all these different colors, yada, yada, yada. But then what you do is you turn on the bonder, and then this other thing around here pops up. And you can navigate through this one independently of navigating through this one, etc. And the stuff inside of here is stuff that you want to take and do something with it in relationship to this taxonomy here. And I'll show you that a little bit later, but it's basically how we manage moving things, copying things, making relationships between things, stuff like that. Attributes are other sort of little bits of information attached to each taxonomy node. We have the idea of different types of attributes that we use for a variety of different things, pretty much anything you want to do with them. I know Tripod, for instance, uses them to define the colors for the different sections in the Explore taxonomy, because each different section has different colors. And they do use something called inheritance, which is how they say, you know, at the top level of the Arts Explore section, I want to have the color be 996644. And that inherits through the taxonomy, because they want everything there in that particular node to inherit all the way down. So when you're in arts and when you're in arts music, it's going to have the same color. We use it for a variety of other things. Some of the celebrity guide data is in Link. We put the celebrity name and what shows they were on and stuff like that. It's a lot of part of the how do you structure your data inside of Link. And attributes provide sort of a lot of foundation for that. Analyze is another mode. You'll see sort of tabs. And you probably didn't ever really know what this was. See a little tab called Analyze. That's basically sort of a catch-all tab that takes, you know, where you currently are, does some analysis, and figures out other things that might be of interest. So one of the things it does is it takes queries, all the queries attached to your current node and stems all of them and shows you other potential queries that might be of interest. So you can figure out whether you want to add those or not to the category. Another thing it does is it analyzes all of the web pages in that category and tries to find other categories inside of Link which have those web pages. These are possibly good integration points, generally interesting information that could potentially help you build a better product. Another sort of basic concept of Link is the driller. And this is another one of these tabs right here. It says drill or whatever. And what you do is you give Link a URL. And it's any URL on the web. And you plug it into a little box, you hit the button, and it comes back and you get this little display. And I think it's sort of this, greenish, army green kind of display. And it shows you all the links on that page that are going out from that page. This is basically a way for somebody to say, take Yahoo for instance, dump it into this display and get all of the links on that page and potentially take them or not. They can do it for, they can drill down through that page to an individual site and get the links on that page. And they can keep drilling through it, hence the name driller. It's a quick way to add a bunch of sites to Link. And it was one of the original concepts. Another very basic thing to Link is this idea of outgoing and incoming links. These are how we manage relationships and between different taxonomy nodes. So we have this big structure, we have this big tree, right? And we're walking down the tree and it's all very structured and everything's great, right? But I want to know other things that are similar to this but are not necessarily subcategories, where they're not necessarily web pages or pictures or things in these individual taxonomy nodes, but I want to know that this image gallery thing here is related to this directory node over here. And that's what the incoming and outgoing links are for. Basically, you use the bonder. You can make a relationship. You can define what type of relationship that is, and various other attributes like descriptions and a rating and things to create that relationship. Elizabeth spends a lot of her time figuring out how to make as many of those relationships as quickly as possible so that we can get WebMD happy or various other people happy so that their stuff shows up on the directory pages or in various other places on the site. So what you'll see in the display is it's a sort of a light blue section, which are all of the outgoing category links. You'll see a corresponding brownish region, which is all of the incoming links. The distinction here is sometimes confusing for people, but basically every outgoing link has a corresponding incoming link somewhere. And that incoming link is in the place where that category is being pointed to. So for every outgoing link, there's a corresponding incoming link. For every incoming link, there's a corresponding outgoing link. Yep.
Just maybe a first
tripod, etc. So one of the ones that people use a lot.
If you reduce the resolution, it'll get clearer. Just project your handle, maybe over 800 or 600, I think.
Okay. Should I do that?
Let's keep
Okay.